Fear does not ring a bell before it destroys you. It whispers, it delays, it convinces you to wait one more day, and in the market, hesitation is expensive. Most people think the market takes money. It doesn't. The market exposes weakness. It exposes panic. It exposes every emotional crack you tried to hide behind motivation and hope. Panic steals more than money. It steals discipline. It steals clarity. It steals years of progress in minutes. The people who survive are not the smartest. They are the calmest. They do not react emotionally. They do not chase noise. They do not collapse when uncertainty arrives. This audiobook is about destroying fear before fear destroys your future. You will learn how fear manipulates decisions, why emotional trading ruins lives, and how disciplined thinking creates financial survival. Because the market does not reward emotion, it rewards control. And if you cannot control yourself, the market will control you.
Like, share, subscribe, now. Fear is not the enemy. Read that again. Fear is not the enemy. Uncontrolled reaction is the enemy. That's the difference between people who survive the market and people who get destroyed by it. Most people believe the market is about intelligence. They believe it is about prediction. They believe it is about secret indicators, hidden information, or perfect timing. Wrong. The market is emotional warfare. And the people who lose are usually not the dumbest people in the room. They are the most emotional. That's the key. Emotion is expensive. Every panic decision has a price. Every impulsive trade has a cost. Every emotional reaction takes money out of your future. You need to understand something most people never learn. The market moves in cycles. Greed, panic, confidence, fear, hope, despair. Then the cycle repeats again. Human emotions never change. That's why market history keeps repeating itself. People become greedy near the top. People become terrified near the bottom. And the average person always reacts too late. That is why most people buy after prices have already exploded. And that is why most people sell after damage is already done. They react emotionally instead of strategically. You have a choice. You can become another emotional statistic, or you can become disciplined. But discipline is not natural. Discipline is trained. Most people do not train emotional control. They train excitement. They train addiction. They train panic. Look at how people behave during market chaos. They refresh charts every 5 minutes. They consume endless news. They stare at red numbers until fear takes over their nervous system. Then they act, and usually the action is destructive. That's the trap. Fear creates urgency. Fear convinces you something must happen immediately. Fear tells you that if you don't react now, you will lose everything. But calm thinking disappears when panic enters the room. Panic creates temporary blindness. That's why people abandon strong positions during crashes. Not because the fundamentals changed, not because the long-term opportunity disappeared, but because emotionally they could not tolerate uncertainty. Short-term fear destroys long-term wealth. Remember that. Short-term fear destroys long-term wealth. The market punishes emotional impatience. You see this happen over and over. People panic during downturns. They sell quality assets at the worst possible moment. Then, months later, the market recovers. The same people watch prices rise without them. Now they feel regret. Now they feel shame. Now they feel anger. And emotional people make terrible decisions when regret takes over. They either refuse to re-enter because they feel stupid, or they chase the recovery too late because they are desperate. Both reactions come from emotional weakness. That's the pattern. The market does not simply test your financial skill. The market tests your nervous system. The market tests your mind before it tests your strategy. That's the key. Most people do not understand how physical fear becomes financial destruction. Their heart races, their breathing changes, their mind spirals, their body enters survival mode. Then logic disappears. You cannot think clearly when your nervous system believes danger is everywhere, and that is why emotional people sabotage themselves. They obsessively check charts. They stare at losses all day. They absorb every negative headline. They constantly search for certainty. But certainty does not exist. That's another truth you must accept. The market is uncertain by nature. People destroy themselves because they worship certainty. They demand guarantees. They want perfect outcomes. They want protection from discomfort. That is impossible. No investor has certainty. No trader has certainty. No entrepreneur has certainty. Winners simply learn how to function calmly without it. That's the difference. Confidence is built through repetition, not prediction. You do not build confidence by predicting the future. You build confidence by repeatedly following your process, again, again, again. That's how emotional stability is created. People think confidence means feeling fearless. No, confidence means you trust your system more than your emotions. That's real confidence. You have a choice. You can obey your emotions, or you can obey your principles. One creates survival. The other creates destruction. Look at the smartest people who fail financially. They often fail because ego controls them. Intelligence without discipline becomes dangerous. Smart people overtrade. Smart people refuse to admit mistakes. Smart people believe they are immune to emotional collapse. Then the market humbles them, because discipline beats intelligence every time. Rules protect you from yourself. That sentence alone can save your future. Rules protect you from yourself, not from the market, from yourself, because you are usually the biggest threat to your own success. Your impatience, your fear, your greed, your ego, your need to be right. That is what destroys people. This is why consistent rules matter. Position sizing matters, stop losses matter, walking away during emotional overload matters. These are not limitations. They are protection. Emotional people hate structure. They want freedom. They want excitement. They want maximum gains immediately. And that mindset destroys them. Professionals survive because they respect risk. Amateurs chase emotional highs. That's the difference. A professional understands survival is the first victory. Stay alive long enough to win. That's the mindset. Stay alive long enough to win. Most people never give themselves enough time to succeed because they emotionally self-destruct too early. They quit after setbacks. They panic after losses. They abandon strategy during uncertainty. Then they restart again from zero. That cycle repeats for years because emotional instability creates inconsistency, and inconsistent behavior produces inconsistent outcomes. You cannot build long-term wealth with short-term emotional thinking. You must become emotionally durable. That's the transformation. Most people focus only on financial skills, but emotional endurance matters more. Pressure reveals character. Anyone can feel confident during easy conditions. Anyone can feel smart during bull markets. Anyone can feel brave when everything goes up. The real test begins during chaos. That's when fear exposes weakness. That's when your habits matter. That's when your emotional conditioning matters. That's when your mindset determines survival. Your psychology is your portfolio. That's the truth. If your psychology collapses, your portfolio usually follows. The market amplifies emotional instability. If you are impatient in life, you will become impatient in the market. If you crave validation in life, you will crave validation from trades. If you avoid discomfort in life, you will avoid necessary risk. Everything becomes exposed. The market reveals who you are. That's why financial growth requires internal growth. You can't separate the two. People want wealth, but they don't want pressure. Impossible. Pressure is part of the process. You must learn how to remain calm while uncertainty exists. That's emotional endurance. And emotional endurance is trainable. You train it by refusing impulsive reactions. You train it by following routines. You train it by reducing emotional decision-making. You train it by accepting discomfort without panic. That's how stability is built. Most people avoid discomfort. Strong people learn how to operate through discomfort. That's the difference. Pause, think, then move. Fear wants instant action. Wisdom creates space. That small pause can save years of damage. Think about how many bad decisions happened because someone reacted emotionally.
A panic sale, a revenge trade, an oversized position, a desperate attempt to recover losses. All emotional. Emotion is expensive. The people who survive understand something powerful. No single moment defines your future. A bad trade is not a bad life. That's important. Most people attach identity to outcomes. When they lose money, they feel worthless. When they fail, they feel broken. When trades go wrong, they attack themselves. That emotional attachment intensifies fear. Because now every decision feels personal, and personal decisions become emotional decisions. Strong investors separate identity from outcomes. They understand losses are part of the game. They understand uncertainty is unavoidable. They understand mistakes happen. But emotional people interpret every setback as personal failure. That mindset creates panic. You have a choice. You can learn from losses, or you can collapse emotionally because of them. One creates growth, the other creates destruction. Again, the market tests your mind before it tests your strategy. That's the key. Most people spend years studying indicators. Very few study themselves. But self-awareness matters more than prediction. You need to know your emotional triggers. Do you panic when volatility rises? Do you become greedy after wins? Do you revenge trade after losses? Do you obsess over short-term fluctuations? These patterns matter because repeated emotional reactions become habits, and habits create outcomes. Your life is built from repeated behavior, not occasional motivation, not temporary discipline, not emotional intensity. Repeated behavior. That's why routines matter. Strong investors create systems that reduce emotional interference. They plan before entering positions. They define risk before excitement appears. They know when to exit. They know how much they can lose. They know when to stop. That preparation protects them. Emotional people do the opposite. They react spontaneously. They improvise emotionally. They chase hype. They follow crowds. They search for shortcuts. Then panic eventually destroys them. Crowd behavior is dangerous. Most people feel safer following the crowd, but the crowd becomes irrational during emotional extremes. The crowd becomes greedy at peaks. The crowd becomes terrified at bottoms. And emotional people copy the crowd because they fear independent thinking. That's why discipline requires emotional separation. You cannot constantly absorb public panic and remain mentally stable. You must protect your attention. That's another one. The market will always create fear. That will never change. There will always be crashes, always uncertainty, always headlines designed to trigger panic. But fear only becomes dangerous when it controls your actions. The people who build wealth are not fearless. They simply refuse to surrender to emotion. Remember this: panic is temporary. Discipline is permanent. Every time you pause instead of reacting, you grow stronger. Every time you follow rules instead of fear, you build resilience. Every time you stay calm while others collapse, you separate yourself from the crowd. The market is not just testing your strategy, it is testing your identity. So train your mind, control your emotions, protect your future. Because if you destroy fear first, the market loses its power over you.